What happens when the dream of travel gets out of reach with inflation rising and costs soaring? There are many people now questioning their ability for them to live their dream of world travel. But here's the thing, this doesn't have to be the end of the story. In fact, you and me together, let's rewrite the story. I had a question from a viewer, Annie, and she said, inflation bothers me more than anything else. What will happen when I get tired of travel, or if it gets too expensive for me? If I can't afford to travel any longer, how will I be able to afford to settle down? Now, this is a recurring theme in questions that Sarah and I have always had since we started our channel here on YouTube. And I'm going to break my answer down into 5 categories. Now, first of all, inflation, there's no getting away from it. It really is a valid concern. Inflation rates have been traditionally low over the last probably 15 years. And then as COVID hit, inflation increased at the same time. Not necessarily correlation. A lot of world events conspired against us all when inflation started to rise up to, in the UK, 10% at one point. But I think the first answer to this question is a financial one. When Annie is talking about not being able to do it, not because she doesn't want to, but because she simply can't afford to. Well, one of the important things to do is to ensure that you're invested in things which are somewhat inflation proof. That is to say, not just sitting on cash. It's easy as we all get older to want to significantly reduce our risk with regard to our finance because we need it to be there for the rest of our lives. Totally get that. But if what you're doing is, as a result of that, just putting money into cash accounts and into savings and drawing down on that, the value of that money is going down year on year. You've got the double whammy of you're drawing the money, and the money that you're drawing is worth less than it was last year. So you've heard me on this channel speak about compounding previously, which is where you're adding money into your pot. And as you're adding it, the return on that investment also gets reinvested, and you start to get this snowball effect of your wealth, I guess, going up higher. This is the exact opposite, where if you're taking money out and the inflation rate is such that the returns you're getting on your fixed savings is lower than the inflation rate, you're taking money out and you're actually doing this and you're eating into your pot much sooner than you need to. So I would recommend looking at inflation protected assets such as, I don't know, some would say property. So it may be that you've got rentals that you are working with, or for me, stocks and shares. So I use low cost index funds. There's no advice here. You do you, I do me. I'm not a financial advisor, and I'm certainly not your financial advisor. But the first key point, I think, that we all need to get our heads around, whether we want to travel or not, is that our money is potentially finite. Certainly if our risk appetite is below the capability of the fund that we've got and the lifestyle that we're hoping to obtain from it. The next point is about the cost of travel. And this, I would ask you, implore, in fact, that you look at the value that you gain from the travel rather than the cost of the travel. Now, what I mean by that is, before Sarah and I retired 4 years ago to travel the world full time, I thought that travel was significantly more expensive than staying at home in the UK. Why did I think that? Well, because we used to do luxury travel effectively. We might go away to a all-inclusive resort for a week or two, or take a cruise somewhere. And because these are vacation spots, vacation travel, there are companies out there that have built their whole industry around effectively extracting your vacation money from your pocket. So this was a big deal for Sarah and I before we jacked everything in to travel the world full time. It was a big fear of mine. But as we have traveled the world now for 4 years, we found that our cost of living is significantly lower than it was when we were in the UK. Now, 2 more points on this specific element. Firstly, I teased about it in the live stream last week, but on our second channel, To Go Rome Travels, we're going to be sharing this week on Wednesday. So it'll be the very next video out on To Go Rome Travels. We're going to be sharing exactly how we budget for our travels, and we've come up with a really ingenious way, I think, of articulating it. It's something we've used ourselves, and we're now going to share with you. And we're actually going to share with you 4 years of our budget from this year, so January 25, right through to 2029. And that might help you to see if it's possible for you to achieve the same kind of thing with the travel mindset that you might have yourself. This does relate to another question that came in from a viewer this week. And this was from someone called Anna Clark. And she said, asking me the question, is it really ethical in today's climate change era to encourage more tourists in already swamped locations? Now, obviously, that's a charged question to ask. So first of all, if I talk about the ethical element of this, on our channel, we're not about the ethics of anything that anyone should do or anyone shouldn't do. I think that should be down to your own personal values. All we can do is share our own life. In fact, I remember another question that was in last week's video where somebody said, why do you think everyone should travel? I don't. I think everyone should do what they want. I'm very much a believer in live and let live. But let's come back to this question. Encouraging people in or more tourists in already swamped locations. Well, actually, that's the opposite to what we do on this channel. And in fact, in this year, we're going to be doing a lot of travel to places that tourists just don't tend to go. So we don't want to encourage anybody to do anything. But what you'll find is if you do go to the tourist areas, those areas which are already swamped with more tourists than they know what to do with, then you will also find that they are the high cost travel locations. Needless to say, you are not going to see Sarah and I in Santorini, for example, in the next year, or Venice or somewhere like that, because those places are totally swamped. We want to share another side of travel for two reasons. One, because it's such a much more interesting thing to see when you see more local areas and small towns and villages around this world of ours. But two, you also find that the costs involved in doing so are significantly lower. So what I would recommend for Annie here in her question is there's such a thing as travel and there's such a thing as being a tourist. You need to make that choice. If you're going to be more of a tourist traveller, then that will significantly increase the cost of your travels. The next point is, this is really, I think, all about lifestyle adaptation and adapting to different ways of living. So if I think about what we've done in the last 4 years of travel, we've kind of done a bit of everything. So we've done those kind of luxury cruises. I was going to release some videos on that, but I don't think our viewers are going to be particularly interested in cruise videos. If you are, let me know. I've got all the footage there that I could share, but I just don't think it's what you guys want to see. We've gone to low cost of living countries. We spent a long time in Mexico, Malaysia, Thailand, Turkey, which was low cost at the time, but their raging inflation has really pushed that up. We've been to high cost of living countries. We've been to Australia, the US, and many others besides, including the UK come to that. We've bought a house in Spain. That's where I am at the moment recording this video, which again, you're going to be seeing a lot more about why that's changed the economics of our world travel and has brought us a lot of joy already. You'll see that on this channel and on To Go Rome Travels. So we've done that. We've also done house sitting. We've house sat in a little town in Mexico. We did it in Salt Lake City, in Seattle, in the UK, and we've done it for friends as well. Now, what this gives us is more of a local lifestyle. So it's adapting to being a local in the area wherever we are, but it's also adapting our budget, because when you're doing house sitting, that is generally at no cost. It's a transaction. we'll look after your house and pets, you give us a place to stay, and we've got a new interesting place to research. So adapting to how you travel. Oh, we also had a motorhome. So we have really done it all, I think, in the last 4 years, which enables your budget to really flex and ebb and flow as you go. But it also really maintains the interest in this kind of lifestyle. So that's the next point. Be adaptable and adapt your budget and your way of life according to the travels you want to do. You have the opportunity to be proactive about your future. So if you're an early retiree, you might be in your 50s, you might be in your 60s, or even your 70s. You can use your travel time as a way to be proactive about your future, your later retirement years. I always used to think that the only option available to me and Sarah was that when we got old and too decrepit to be able to travel, we'd have to, I guess, put our tail between our legs and return to the UK and get treatment on the NHS and do all that kind of stuff. But as we've travelled, we've learned there are so many more options. And that's what this travel really gives us. So in places such as Thailand, you can have living care when you're older at a fraction of the costs that you'd see in the UK. Or you can go to a centre, what would you call that? In the UK, we call it an old people's home. So in Thailand, an old people's home, where you have your own villa in grounds at a fraction of the costs you'd see elsewhere. So we see this travel period for Sarah and I as an opportunity to just get a view on the world and see how the world operates with regard to later life care, in the hope that we might find something that really appeals to us. It doesn't appeal to me, I've got to be honest, to be in rainy, cold Britain when I'm 90 years old in an old people's home, looking out at rain running down the window and having to watch daytime TV. Doesn't excite me. So I'm all about looking and searching and finding what will be the right place for us going forward. The way you can look at this is, as you travel, you get a broader knowledge of what the world, the makeup of the world. So as Sarah and I look at planning our year ahead, or our 4 years ahead, as we have just done for that other video, we're able to categorize the world and say that location A costs this much, location B costs another value, location C another value, and D another value, and then start to group countries together into these each value areas. So then what we can do is put together a real nice ebb and flow of our year, and we can say, right, we'll spend a couple of months in low cost, and then a couple of months in medium, a couple of months in high, and a month in super high, because that will level out the year for us and level out the cost of our travels. I had a fantastic conversation with a friend who does exactly the same as Sarah and I about 3 years ago when we were in Malaysia. I'm sure he's watching this video and I'm sure he remembers this conversation as well. And at that time, the world was as stable, maybe more stable than it is today. I'm not necessarily as confident today about the future of this planet as I was maybe 10 or 15 years ago. And we were having a beer and we were talking about our travels. To explain what I'm about to tell you, the way that you need to see the world differently through my eyes is, I think, if I compare me today to me 10 years ago before I started traveling. So 10 years ago, I would have maybe a view of my entire year ahead, because I'd say, if I was sat in January, I'd say, yeah, we got a vacation booked in July for 2 weeks. We're going to be going away with some friends for a weekend in April for a couple of days. And then we are planning to replace the kitchen in September. So we're looking to talk to people in April about, so I could kind of plan out this ebb and flow of the year in a much more straightforward way. The way our world works now is we do it on a month by month basis. So I'm sat in Spain at the moment, but we have only just booked our flights to our next travel location, which you'll probably see us in a couple of weeks' time. So stick around to see where that is, because it should be kind of fun. So we plan on a month-to-month basis. So in the video where we share the how we kind of structure our year, what you'll see from there is we talk not necessarily about countries, but in categories of countries. So low cost, mid cost, high cost, super high cost. So when talking to this friend all those years ago, the word that came up that I've clung on to ever since then is nimble. That we can be nimble. We don't know what's happening in the world. We don't know what's going to happen in the world. But for the vast majority of people, there is a fixed lifestyle. You know, you own this house, all of your friends are in the same area, you travel and you vacation in the same places. But people who choose to do this travel lifestyle, well, what they have is a nimble approach to life. So if we want to, if say the cost of living significantly increases in Thailand, we'll go somewhere else. One thing I can tell you is if the cost of living in Thailand goes up by 50%, then chances are the cost of living in the UK has gone up by 50%. But 50% in Thailand goes there, 50% in the UK goes there. So us being nimble enables us to really flex our way around the world and around world events, which I think is also a really useful benefit of this. So coming back to Annie's question, inflation bothers me more than anything else. What will happen when I get tired of travel? Well, if you use the travel effectively, you're going to seek out those places that you'll want to be in your post-travel life. And what happens when it gets more expensive and too expensive for you, Annie? Well, I would say our life now is far less expensive than our sedentary lifestyle back in the UK. Annie said if she can't afford to travel any longer, how will she be able to afford to settle down? You will be better able to settle down than almost anybody else, because you would have had the opportunity to see the world, see where you'll want to settle down, and see where effectively your money can stretch much further than maybe your home. And Annie, I don't know where you live in the world, and I really hope this video has been useful to you and to anybody else watching. I've got loads of these questions that have been submitted by viewers, and I'll be sharing my answers to those over the coming weeks. So if you haven't subscribed to Go Roam, I highly recommend you do that now, and I'll see you in the next one.